call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens? Here. Kammerer?
Here.
Carbonaro?
Here.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Here.
Chipman?
Here.
President Wallace?
Here. Only item we have on committee of the whole meeting this evening is under planning and zoning for Trustee Kammerer.
Thank you, Mr. President. This evening we have the Downtown Tax Increment Financing District, and staff is requesting direction to continue proceeding in the creation of a new tax increment financing, a TIF district, in conjunction with TIF consulting firm Kane McKenna and Associates. To date, the village has paid Kane McKenna $25,540 for consulting service, including meetings and data collection, to determine that the downtown commercial district meets the state's criteria as a conservation area TIF. The next step in order to proceed is for the village board to adopt a resolution to convene a joint review board, JRB, comprised of local taxing districts to review the TIF qualification report and redevelopment plan, and then to render a recommendation to the village board in regard to the adoption of ordinances to create a new TIF district. And with that, I will turn this over to our Community Development Director, Jim, and let you give us more up-to-date information.
That pretty well summed it up, Trustee Kammerer. I can go over the items that you had seen before that we had presented to the EDC. I put the TIF map up there that's proposed. Then we went through our redevelopment goals, the 7 goals that we had outlined in the draft redevelopment plan. And then there was the estimated project cost of $17 million. Land acquisition, site preparation, environmental remediation, utilities, rehabilitation, interest costs, planning, legal engineering, job training, school and library district payments if needed, for an estimated budget in the plan of $17.5 million. Our redevelopment project again references those items: land assembly, site preparation, landscaping, buffering, streetscaping, rehabilitation and utilities, and roadway, street parking improvements, public improvements if necessary, traffic control, public safety, interest coverage, professional services, and again the school and library costs if needed. Our TIF qualification report, which was the eligibility study done by Kane McKenna, identified the TIF as a conservation area TIF, and we met 6 of the goals in the conservation TIF: the lag in EAV, the inadequate utilities, vacancies, community planning, deterioration, and obsolescence. And again, the summary of findings: the TIF is over 1.5 acres. It's a conservation area. The properties in the area would substantially benefit by proposed redevelopment. The sound growth of the taxing districts, including the village, have been impaired by factors found in the area, and the area would not be subject to redevelopment without the investment of the public funds, including the property tax increment, which is the but-for test. Chuck Durham from Kane McKenna, our consultant, is here in the audience if you have any questions. But as you stated, we would like direction to continue on and pass at the next board meeting, if possible, pass a resolution to convene the joint review board and move forward into that part of it, ultimately having a public hearing in front of you after the joint review board and adopting the 3 ordinances necessary to establish the TIF.
Any questions by the board?
Curious about the but-for. How do we come to that conclusion?
The but-for? Mm-hmm. Well, we come to the conclusion based on our understanding of what's going on in the last several years, which has been a lack of investment, somewhat due primarily to the recession and other things. So as we evaluate it, we look at that lack of investment and we ask the question, could the area benefit, could investment be encouraged by use of tax refinancing, and we concluded that it could.
Well, all right, but I think that's safe to say about just about any place. I mean, everybody'd love to have some tax money to redo their facade and their roofs and everything else. My question is, am I understanding your statement correctly here that but for the tax increment financing, nobody's going to spend money?
I wouldn't say nobody. I would say that there would probably not be as much investment as could be encouraged by the use of tax financing as an incentive to encourage more investment, private investment downtown.
I will just give you an example that we face. We hear from people who are looking at, and Chuck's not here every day, so we hear from people that are looking at some of the vacant buildings in town, and Tony hears it every day that, what can the village do for me if I want to come in to redevelop this property? I'm not interested in it unless there is some way that the village can help me do that. And we're hearing the practical side or the everyday side of the but-for argument. They will not come. Many of these people that we deal with will not come to the village in the downtown area unless there is some means of providing an incentive. The TIF, and from a legal standpoint, Brian will point it out, that is probably the best way to create incentives for people who want to come in and redevelop. I've talked recently to people who have, and Tony and I have, and we've met with them that are interested in the Gorski Plaza, people who want to do something with the old Borman building. I call it the Borman building, but everybody knows, I don't know what we call it, the Lucky Jacks people who have acquired it through an auction. They're kind of waiting in the wings, if you will, because they don't want to move forward on it. They don't know if they're going to move forward unless there's a TIF. So that's something that we see pretty regularly. And and for the reasons that Chuck's company did the analysis, we're hearing that. Even the people who bought the town center across the street are looking for things to do to expand their development over there. And
That's a solid
it's an
argument.
incentive.
Yeah, they're looking for more I'm sorry.
That's a solid argument. Thank you.
Yeah. They're looking to put in more parking, I believe, right?
Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, and is that it?
Yes, for now.
When reading through the notes of the EDC, a couple of things stuck out to me. One of the comments that you made, Jim, was it really gets complicated when you include DuPage County. When you cross-count,
Boundaries.
cross-county boundaries, it just seems unfortunate that we couldn't have that intersection, that lot that's been open at Devon and Prospect for so long involved in this, but it is pretty complicated just to go across DuPage, right?
It is complicated. You expand your joint review board. Chuck can give you a number of reasons, but that's one of the things. You have different increments that you have to be aware of. Most of the TIFs that we've done in the village have all stayed in one county or another. Chuck, maybe if you want to elaborate on that.
Yes, I mean, the two things, as Jim mentioned, one is just the process you have to go through with respect to the Joint Review Board. When you cross the county, you greatly expand the membership on the Joint Review Board, and therefore the potential for additional conversation, contents, votes come into play, and that could really lengthen out the process, and sometimes in some communities it's actually stunted the process. With respect to multi-county TIF districts, it does get to be a complicated situation, particularly with respect to Cook County and almost any county, in terms of managing tax increment within that district and how it's generated, how it's assessed, and how you spend it. So those are some of the complications that come to play. They're not insurmountable. They can be dealt with, but we felt in this particular case, since there was a definable line to keep it all in Cook County, that's what we recommended.
I mean, once the non-insurmountable things are jumped over, is it pretty easy from there on out? I mean, once it's established, there isn't any other bumps along the road?
No, not really. I mean, ultimately, this body holds the power to put in place the TIF district, regardless even if the taxing districts from the Joint Review Board object to it. So ultimately, all of those type of barriers could be overcome by this body and the City Council if that's the direction the Village Board wanted to go.
I guess the big question is, do you think it would help that empty lot that's been there for so long?
We have looked at numerous people interested in that property. We have had site plans that have been prepared and ready to vote on in the past and recently. Nobody's interested in it now. The person who owned it lost it. That's not a piece that people have said, is this in a TIF, is that?
Okay. The sunflowers are nice when they grow them, so we should probably get them to do that again.
No matter what happens there, we'll get a lot of objection.
Okay. Strike that question.
Fair enough.
Any other questions by the board?
Would just point out procedurally, with this, there'll be a resolution. We'll be bringing an engagement letter agreement with Chapman and Cutler, would be bond counsel. They'd be looking at some of the procedures as well. But actually, they don't get paid unless and until bonds or developer notes are issued. Typically, be bonds in this case. There'd be some fees, but that's how theirs is structured. They're necessary because you need a nationally recognized firm to issue an opinion that the bonds are tax exempt, so it's required. And they should be involved early in the process, because if any procedure is wrong, then they won't render that opinion. And this TIF Act is amended many times, and one new requirement is that each board member, consultants, including the village attorney and McKenna, have to file a written statement that we don't own any property within the TIF district, and if we did, at least an elected official would have to recuse themselves for deliberations with respect to the TIF. So there's some procedural things that change, from year to year between the last time we did a TIF and currently, and those are some of the things that we need to do in this process early on. But we thought it premature to bring those up or bring those before you got to this point where you're looking at whether to go forward or not, and sort of set on what the TIF redevelopment area will be.
Good. The only other comment that I'll make is through and throughout the comments in the EDC, they were talking about a comprehensive plan for downtown before we put in the TIF. To my knowledge, I've seen it a dozen times. We have a comprehensive plan for downtown. We've had it for a long time. When was the last time we dusted that off? And I mean, really, as a village, we can't say, okay, here's the plan, this is what we want it to look like when you're using outside investors. But I think it's important that people know there is a plan for downtown, and this is kind of comes alongside it and hopefully encourages that plan to come to fruition. So EDC needs to probably understand that there is one.
Well, there is a current plan that we use. It's been a while since we've done it, but as you remember, we also applied as part of the EDC's recommendation for an RTA grant, and we received a grant for a downtown planning study. And so we'll be doing that. That's coming along soon, probably in the spring, and they've given us money to do that kind of downtown plan to kind of upgrade it. So
Good.
The TIF is a good vehicle to implement
Right.
not only that ideas that are coming forth, but what we have on the books.
Now, that RTA, do we have any members on that plan that provide input to them, or do they just come in as consultants?
We will hire, as part of that process, we will hire a consultant that will come into the village. They set up stakeholder meetings. They'll want a representative group made up of commissioners and trustees to bounce, and business people to bounce ideas back and forth, and there'll be public input in that.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage that we reach out to some of these that have had a ongoing stake in this downtown area,
Yes.
and just really encourage them to be a part of that plan. Because once you do that, then you've actually given them the ability for their input versus them trying to nickel and dime it, and then everybody's on the same page with what we're hoping it will look like down the road.
Yes, that's kind of the intent of that grant.
Okay, thank you.
So if there aren't any other questions, as I understand it, the staff is wanting us to direct them to prepare a resolution calling for a public hearing and a joint review board meeting to consider the designation of a redevelopment project area and the approval of a redevelopment plan and project for the Village of Bartlett Downtown Tax Increment Financing District. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Very good. And that is all we have this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Kammerer.
Zoning.
Moving along, I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss property acquisition pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Trustee Kammerer, seconded by Trustee Martin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Aaron's? Yes. Kammerer?
Yes?
Carbonaro?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ranky?
Yes.
Shipman?
Yeah.
Meeting's adjourned.